In the high desert shadows of the Santa Catalina Mountains, the morning sun usually brings a predictable, golden rhythm to the Catalina foothills. But on Sunday, February 1st, 2026, that rhythm was shattered by a single, unanswered phone call from a local church. A call that would signal the start of a nightmare for one of America's most recognizable families and ignite a mystery that has left investigators standing at a forensic dead end. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The Catalina foothills are not just a neighborhood. They are an architectural statement of desert luxury and quiet isolation. Situated just north of Tucson, Arizona, the area is defined by its rugged arroyos, towering saguaros, and custom-built homes that blend into the rocky landscape. It is a place where privacy is the primary currency. For 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, this was the sanctuary where she lived her life with a sense of routine and peace. On Saturday night, January 31st, 2025, that peace appeared undisturbed. Nancy was last seen and accounted for at approximately 9:45 p.m. To any observer, it was a typical Saturday evening in a community where the loudest sound is often the call of a coyote in the distance. There were no reports of screams, no calls to 911 about suspicious vehicles, and no alarms triggered in the dark of the night. Nancy Guthrie is a woman whose identity is deeply woven into the fabric of Tucson. While the world knows her as the Mother of Today show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, the local community knows her as a woman of profound faith and unshakable character. Savannah, who was raised in these very foothills and graduated from the University of Arizona, has never missed an opportunity to credit her mother for her success. The bond between Nancy and her children, Savannah and her two siblings, was forged in a shared history of resilience. Decades ago, the family faced a defining tragedy when Nancy's husband, Savannah's father, passed away suddenly from a heart attack. Savannah was only 16 years old at the time. In the vacuum left by that loss, Nancy became the North Star for her children. She wasn't just a parent. She was the model for what a mother should be, a sentiment Savannah shared with millions of her followers on social media. This deep-rooted sense of family and routine is exactly why the events of Sunday morning were so immediately alarming. Nancy Guthrie was not a woman who missed her commitments. She was a pillar of her local church, and her presence in the pews was as certain as the sunrise. When the service began and Nancy's seat remained empty, it wasn't dismissed as a simple case of oversleeping. The church community, knowing Nancy's disciplined nature and her physical limitations, sensed a void. A call was placed to her family around 11 a.m., a call that would set a terrifying chain of events in motion. When Nancy's family arrived at the residence near East Skyline Drive and North Campbell Avenue, they didn't find a home that had been ransacked or a door kicked off its hinges. Instead, they found a chilling stillness. The house, located in a suburban community about 15 minutes north of downtown Tucson, stood exactly as it had the night before. But Nancy was gone. For an hour, the family conducted their own desperate search, checking every room, every closet, and the immediate perimeter of the property. At 12 p.m., realizing that the situation was beyond their control, they dialed 911. The Pima County Sheriff's Department, PCSD, responded with the standard protocol for a missing vulnerable adult. In a typical scenario involving an 84-year-old, the primary fear is wandering, a condition often associated with dementia where a senior walks away and becomes disoriented. However, the Guthrie family was quick to correct this narrative. They informed deputies immediately that Nancy was of great sound mind. She was described as being as sharp as a tack, ruling out the possibility of a mental lapse or a confused exit from the home. Furthermore, they pointed to a physical reality that made her disappearance seem impossible. Nancy's mobility was severely limited. According to family statements, she was physically unable to walk more than 50 yards on her own. This 50-yard radius became the center of a frantic forensic circle. If Nancy couldn't walk more than 50 yards, she should have been found within minutes of the deputies' arrival. The Catalina foothills, while rugged, are not an infinite wilderness. The area around Skyline and Campbell is residential. If a woman with limited mobility had simply stepped outside, she would have been visible to neighbors or found in a nearby wash. But she wasn't. As the first responding officers completed their initial sweep, the realization began to sink in. The perimeter of the search wasn't expanding because Nancy had walked away. It was expanding because the evidence was pointing to something much more sinister. By Sunday afternoon, the Pima County Sheriff's Department realized they were dealing with a case that defied the logic of a simple missing persons report. They weren't just looking for a grandmother who had lost her way. They were standing in the middle of a residence that was rapidly transitioning from a home into a potential crime scene. The search and rescue teams were deployed, but the investigators' eyes were already turning back toward the house itself. The concerning evidence had not yet been fully identified to the public, but the shift in the deputy's body language was unmistakable. As the sun began to set on that first day, the community of Tucson watched as a massive command post was established. The quiet foothills were now flooded with the glow of police cruisers and the rhythmic thumping of helicopter blades. The Guthrie family issued their first statement, a heartbreaking plea for Nancy's safe return, even as the sheriff's department began to call in federal reinforcements. The mystery of how a woman who can barely walk could vanish from the inside of a locked home began to ripple out from Arizona to the national news desks in New York. The first 24 hours are critical in any disappearance, but in this case, the clock wasn't just ticking for the investigators. It was ticking for Nancy's very survival. The family revealed a detail that turned the search into a race against biology. Nancy required daily, life-sustaining medication. Without it, the sheriff warned, the outcome could be fatal within a day. But as the forensic teams began their deep dive into the home, they found the one thing that confirmed their worst fears. Nancy's cell phone was still sitting inside the house, silent and unmoved, while the woman who owned it had vanished without a trace. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie transitioned from a frantic desert search into a cold, clinical forensic operation with jarring speed. By the morning of Monday, February 2nd, the air around the Guthrie residence in the Catalina foothills had changed. The bright yellow police line, "Do Not Cross" tape, which had initially been used to keep curious onlookers away from search and rescue staging areas, was now serving a much more serious purpose. It was preserving the integrity of a confirmed crime scene. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, a veteran of law enforcement who has seen his fair share of desert mysteries, took a stance that few expected so early in the timeline. He didn't just suggest foul play was possible. He confirmed that we do, in fact, have a crime scene. This declaration was not made lightly. In the world of criminal justice, declaring a home a crime scene before a body is found or a suspect is identified is a high-stakes move. It allows investigators to execute more comprehensive search warrants and brings in a level of specialized personnel that a standard missing persons case would never see. The most telling sign of this shift was the arrival of the Pima County Homicide Unit, led by Sergeant David Stiver. Stiver, described by the sheriff as an investigator who had gone zero sleep since the 911 call was placed, represents the tip of the spear in Tucson's most serious criminal probes. When the homicide unit takes the lead on a missing persons case within the first 24 hours, it signals that the evidence found inside the home was not just suspicious, but likely violent or indicative of a forced removal. The forensics of the Guthrie home are currently the most closely guarded secret in Pima County. Sheriff Nanos has repeatedly used the phrase "concerning evidence" to describe what his deputies found, but he has refused to elaborate on whether that means blood spatter, signs of a struggle, or a door that was breached from the outside. However, the logic of the scene is dictated by the victim's own physical reality. Nancy Guthrie, at 84, was not a woman who could have left the house quickly or quietly. The forensic team spent the night processing the points of entry and exit, looking for what they call transfer evidence, fibers, soil, or DNA that shouldn't be there. In a home as meticulously kept as Nancy's, an out-of-place shoe print or a smudge on a window frame becomes a glaring beacon for investigators. While the wet forensics, the fingerprints and DNA, were being gathered, a parallel digital forensics investigation was unfolding in real time. The most significant piece of evidence recovered so far is Nancy's own cell phone, which was found inside the house. In 2026, a person's phone is essentially an extension of their consciousness. For an 84-year-old woman of sound mind, to leave her primary lifeline behind suggests she either didn't have time to grab it or was physically prevented from doing so. The FBI has now been called in to assist with the extraction of data from that device. They aren't just looking at her last calls or texts. They are looking at the background data, the pings to the home's Wi-Fi router, the movement recorded by the phone's internal accelerometer, and any anomalies in her digital routine. Beyond the walls of the house, the Pima County Sheriff's Department has turned the entire Catalina foothills into a digital dragnet. This is where the investigation meets the cutting edge of modern policing. Sheriff Nanos made a pointed plea for the community to ignore the politics and help the department utilize its technology. The primary tool in this search is the license plate reader, LPR system. These cameras, scattered throughout the valley and at major intersections like North Campbell Avenue, act as a silent log of every vehicle that enters or leaves the neighborhood. Detectives are currently filtering thousands of data points, looking for any vehicle that entered the area around 9:45 p.m. on Saturday night and left in the early morning hours of Sunday. They are looking for out-of-area plates or vehicles that have been flagged in other criminal databases. The technological search doesn't stop at the roadside. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has deployed an array of air assets that read like a science fiction novel. This includes drones equipped with high-resolution 4K cameras and, more importantly, aircraft outfitted with forward-looking infrared FLIR sensors. These sensors detect heat signatures against the cold desert floor. During the overnight hours between Sunday and Monday, these aircraft flew in tight, circular patterns, visualized as concentric rings on the official search map, scanning every wash, every cactus grove, and every backyard for the heat signature of a human body. The fact that these high-tech searches yielded nothing only reinforces the sheriff's theory. Nancy is not in the desert. This realization led to the standing down of the search and rescue volunteers. In a typical missing person case, seeing volunteers being sent home is a sign of giving up. In the Nancy Guthrie case, it is the opposite. It is a refinement of the mission. The sheriff explained that they no longer see this as a search mission in the traditional sense. They are now in the investigative phase, which focuses on people, motives, and vehicles. This shift was underscored by the involvement of BORSTAR, the Border Patrol's elite search, trauma, and rescue unit. BORSTAR brought in specialized K-9 units trained not just to follow a scent trail, but to detect human remains and disturbed earth. These dogs are the final word in desert searches, and their inability to find a trail leading away from the house on foot confirms that Nancy likely left in a vehicle. As the homicide unit continues to canvass the neighborhood, they are asking residents to do more than just look out their windows. They are asking for a digital canvas. Every Ring doorbell, every Arlo camera, and every private security system in the Catalina foothills is now a potential witness. Detectives are looking for anything suspicious. A car driving without headlights, a person walking at 3 a.m., or even a delivery truck that was in the area at an unusual time. The sheriff's frustration with political leaders who view this technology as evil or abusive highlights the stakes. In his view, these cameras are the only way to find Nancy before her medical window closes. The involvement of the FBI adds another layer of gravity. Federal agents don't typically join a local missing person search unless there is a suspicion of kidnapping or a crime that crosses state lines. Their presence indicates that law enforcement is preparing for the possibility that Nancy is no longer in Pima County. They are using cell tower dumps to identify every mobile device that was active within a 1-mile radius of the Guthrie home during the critical 14-hour window of her disappearance. This process, while legally complex, can pinpoint a suspect's movement with terrifying accuracy. Yet, despite the helicopters, the FBI, the homicide detectives, and the digital dragnets, the investigation is haunted by a single physical truth. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old and physically vulnerable. While the homicide unit processes the suspicious circumstances, they are acutely aware that they are not just looking for a criminal. They are looking for a woman whose life depends on a daily medical regimen. The concerning evidence found in the house may hold the key to who took her, but it doesn't tell them where she is now. As the sun sets on day 2, The homicide team has moved their base of operations from the house to the station to begin the data crunching. The neighborhood is quiet again, but the silence is heavy. The Guthrie family, including Savannah, remains in constant contact with the FBI, waiting for a break in the digital trail. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie is no longer a static mystery. It has evolved into a high-stakes race against the human body's own requirements for survival. In true crime, we often discuss the timeline of a crime, but in this case, the most critical timeline is the biological one. By Monday afternoon, February 2nd, 2026, the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the Guthrie family shifted their public messaging to highlight a terrifying reality. Time is not just a measurement of the investigation. It is a measurement of Nancy's very life. Sheriff Chris Nanos issued a stark warning that has reverberated through the Tucson community. Nancy Guthrie requires specific daily medication, the absence of which could be fatal within 24 to 48 hours. This medical red line changes the entire calculus of the search. While detectives from the homicide unit meticulously process the suspicious circumstances inside the home, a different kind of urgency is felt by those on the ground. To be 84 years old and physically vulnerable in the Arizona desert, or worse, held against your will in an unknown location, is a scenario that leaves zero room for delay. Jenna Bush Hager, Savannah's longtime colleague, underscored this on the Today Show broadcast, reminding millions of viewers that Nancy isn't just missing. She is without the pharmaceutical lifeline she needs for survival. This is the race against biology that defines the third day of the search. It is a race where every minute spent analyzing a digital ping is a minute where Nancy's physical health is potentially cascading toward a point of no return. To understand the weight of this race, one must understand the woman at the center of it. Nancy Guthrie's life in Tucson was characterized by a laid-back and gentle quality, a description she gave in a poignant November 2025 interview with her daughter. In that film segment, Nancy reflected on why she and her late husband, Charles, chose to plant their roots in the desert in the 1970s. She spoke of the air, the quality of life, and the peace of the foothills. She was a homemaker who was the pivotal role in her family's dynamics, raising Savannah and her two siblings, Annie and Cameron, with a blend of faith and fierce encouragement. When Savannah was offered her first news job in Butte, Montana, at age 21, it was Nancy who pushed her to go, telling her, "I'm not going to stand in the way of your dreams." Now, the woman who spent her life facilitating the dreams of others is caught in a nightmare that has brought her daughter back to Tucson not as a storyteller, but as a victim of a horrific unknown. The investigation into how this gentle life was interrupted has now turned inward. Sheriff Nanos confirmed that while Nancy lived alone, she was far from isolated. Like many seniors in the affluent Catalina foothills, Nancy had a network of house staff who helped maintain the property and her daily life. This includes gardeners, cleaners, and maintenance workers who had regular, scheduled access to the residence near East Skyline Drive. Detectives have begun the grueling process of vetting these individuals. They are looking for more than just a lack of an alibi. They are looking for insider knowledge. In a case where there was no immediate sign of a break-in, and where a woman with limited mobility was removed from her home, the how often points to someone who knew the layout of the house, the timing of her church services, and the fact that she was physically unable to resist. A critical point of focus for the Pima County Homicide Unit is a report of a suspicious encounter that may have occurred in the days leading up to the disappearance. Sheriff Nanos addressed this directly, pleading with residents to report anything, even a minor prowler sighting or a car turning around in a driveway at an odd hour. The theory is that Nancy may have been cased. Someone may have been watching the house, noting the times her family left and the times she was most vulnerable. This leads to the heart-wrenching statement released by the Guthrie family on Monday morning. Delivered with a mix of gratitude and desperation, the statement read, "On behalf of our family, I want to thank everyone for the thoughts, prayers, and messages of support. Right now, our focus remains on the safe return of our dear Nancy." Savannah Guthrie herself is currently on the ground in Tucson, having skipped her anchor duties to coordinate with local and federal law enforcement. Her presence adds a layer of national scrutiny that the Pima County Sheriff's Department is acutely aware of. Sheriff Nanos noted that Savannah has a security team that has been plugged in with his detectives, ensuring that any lead, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, is pursued with the full weight of their combined resources. The logistics of the House staff investigation are complex. In a post-2020 world, much of this work is documented through digital footprints, apps used to schedule house cleanings, digital keys, and electronic payment records. The FBI's digital forensic team is currently cross-referencing these logs with cell tower data. They are looking for a digital ghost, a phone that was in the vicinity of Nancy's home between 9:45 p.m. Saturday and noon Sunday that doesn't belong to a neighbor or a known staff member. They are also looking for any deleted communications or unusual spikes in data usage from those who had access to her home. Despite the clinical nature of the investigation, the emotional toll is surfacing in the sheriff's briefings. Nanos, who typically maintains a stoic, just the facts demeanor, spoke with a cracked voice when he described Nancy as just a great lady. He acknowledged the irony of the situation. A woman who spent her life making sure her family was safe and secure was not able to be safe in her own room. This statement, more than any forensic detail, suggests that the concerning evidence found in the home was found in the very place where Nancy should have been most protected, her bedroom. The search patterns shown on the law enforcement maps have grown more concentrated. While the search and rescue for a wandering person has ended, the forensic search for evidence has expanded. 9 units from the Border Patrol, specifically Borstar agents, are recombing the area not for a living person, but for anything Nancy might have dropped or any sign of where a vehicle might have pulled off the road. They are looking for a toss, evidence thrown out of a car window by a fleeing suspect. As the sun sets on the third night, the medical urgency has reached a fever pitch. The 24-hour window for her medication has closed, and the 48-hour window is rapidly narrowing. The race against biology is now in its most critical phase. The community of Tucson, once a place Nancy described as gentle, is now a landscape of high-tension wires and digital dragnets. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The final phase of the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie has moved beyond the quiet cul-de-sacs of the Catalina foothills and into the cold, high-speed reality of Arizona's highway systems. As of the evening of February 2, 2026, the Pima County Sheriff's Department, bolstered by federal agents, has pivoted to a theory that determines not just how the crime was committed, but why. The question haunting the homicide unit is binary. Was Nancy Guthrie the victim of a calculated, targeted abduction, or was she the unfortunate target of a random, opportunistic predator? The targeted theory is one that investigators must handle with extreme delicacy. Nancy's daughter, Savannah Guthrie, is a household name, a woman whose life, schedule, and family history are documented in the public record. In the dark corners of the internet, the families of high-profile media figures are often subject to doxing or obsessive monitoring. Sheriff Chris Nanos has been careful not to confirm a direct link between Savannah's career and her mother's abduction, but the presence of the FBI's behavioral analysis experts suggests that law enforcement is looking for a motive that goes beyond a simple residential burglary. If Nancy was targeted, the perpetrator would have known her vulnerabilities, her limited mobility, the fact that she lived alone, and the specific window of time on Saturday night when the foothills are at their quietest. Conversely, the random theory presents a different kind of terror for the Tucson community. A random attack implies a prowler, someone casing the affluent neighborhood for any house that seemed like an easy mark. However, the forensics of the Guthrie home complicate this. If a random burglar had entered the home, the goal is typically property, jewelry, cash, or electronics. The removal of an 84-year-old woman who cannot walk 50 yards is not a standard byproduct of a robbery. It is a deliberate, high-effort act. This led Sergeant David Stiver of the homicide team to look closely at the highway exit forensics. However, as the investigation expands globally, the biological reality remains local and agonizingly personal. We are now past the 48-hour mark since Nancy was last seen. The medical window, which the sheriff described as fatal without medication, has reached its limit. The human body at 84 has very little reserve, and the specific daily regimen Nancy required was not just for comfort. It was for the maintenance of vital functions. Every hour that passes without a sighting is an hour where the hope for a safe return battles with the statistical likelihood of a medical emergency. This is the shadow of the unknown that hangs over the Pima County Sheriff's headquarters. The psychological toll on the family has been immense. Savannah Guthrie has remained in Tucson, reportedly staying in a secure location while her own private security team coordinates with the FBI. The family's focus has not wavered. They want their mother back. They have avoided the political mumble-jumble that the sheriff criticized, focusing instead on the humanity of the victim. They have shared stories of Nancy as a woman who, despite her physical limits, was the sharpest person in the room. A woman who could discuss theology or the news with equal fervor. This portrait of Nancy is crucial. It reminds the public that she is not a senior citizen statistic, but a vibrant mind trapped in a vulnerable body. In the latest briefing, Sheriff Nanos addressed the threat to the public. While he stated there is no evidence of an active prowler spree, he urged residents to remain vigilant. The concerning evidence inside the home has now been processed for touch DNA, the microscopic skin cells left behind on a doorknob or a piece of furniture. These samples have been sent to the state lab for expedited processing, a move reserved for cases of extreme national interest or immediate danger. If the perpetrator has a prior criminal record, their identity could be sitting in a database, waiting for a computer to make the match. The investigation has also turned to digital forensics of a different kind, social media and dark web monitoring. The FBI is looking for any mention of the Guthrie family or high-profile targets. In the weeks leading up to the disappearance, they are searching for chatter that might indicate a planned kidnapping for ransom or a targeted strike by someone with a grudge against the media. While this remains speculative, in a case with no signs of a standard walk away, every angle must be exhausted. As the sun sets on February 2nd, the Guthrie case remains at a knife's edge. The integrity of the investigation is being protected with a level of secrecy that suggests the police have more than they are telling the public. Yet the lack of a person of interest indicates they are still waiting for that one definitive tip. The community of the Catalina foothills, usually a place of quiet desert beauty, is now a neighborhood of locked doors and watchful eyes. Nancy Guthrie's disappearance is a story of a crime scene where a home used to be. It is a story of a daughter's fame becoming a potential liability and a police department's technology becoming a lifeline. But above all, it is a story of a woman whose 84 years of life deserve a better ending than a mystery in the dark. The race against biology is almost over, and the race for justice has only just begun. The FBI, the Pima County Homicide Unit, and a nation of viewers are all looking at the same desert horizon, waiting for a sign of the woman who couldn't walk 50 yards, but whose story has traveled around the world. And as always, you've been watching True Crime Story Vault, where every story is told with facts, empathy, and respect for those who can no longer speak for themselves. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button and comment your thoughts below. Until next time, remember, the truth is never buried.